Hello, Folajogun. Thanks for joining us in the news.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening to you. Now, the theme of this year's International Day of Persons Living with Disabilities is leadership and participation of persons with disabilities towards an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. How relevant is this year's theme to the plight of persons living with disabilities in Nigeria and Africa at large?
All right. The relevance cannot be overemphasized because, for starters, Nigeria was also hit with, and Africa at large was also hit with COVID-19. Although the ratio now is left to be disputed, or how hard it's hitting us is left to be disputed. But the truth of the matter is, persons living with disabilities are always at the end of the line when it comes to caring for people during COVID-19. And as a result, we find total neglect of persons living with disabilities during the pandemic, especially in 2020, when everybody catered for their immediate family, brought everybody in and everything. And no one cared to look at the street beggars. No one cared to look at the disabled persons in the lepers colony, in everybody just wanted to look out for themselves. So getting the interconnectivity of the society, forgetting the interconnectivity of the world at large, forgetting the fact that we are all reliant on each other. At some point, my organization had to go all out in distributing nose masks to street disabled persons. Those are at the very bottom of the ladder because they cannot fend for themselves, they cannot provide for themselves, they cannot take care of themselves, and no one is looking out for them. At some point, we had to do it because at that point we realized that if an able-bodied person should give one of the street beggars 20 naira change, for example, and then you pass that money to someone else, one way or the other, it can get to the rich man's house who has refused to pay attention, and that to enhance the spread of COVID-19. But post-COVID now is another issue entirely, and believe me when I say this, persons who do not have disabilities and are well and okay are still finding it difficult to get to the position of leadership post-COVID, not to mention persons living with disabilities. You see the poster of one person living with disabilities. Somebody contested in my region some times ago, and she was a person living with disability. By the time she released the poster, we're talking leadership now, the thing, you just see a poster, people just went to write disabled, disabled, disabled in different dialects, different platforms.
That's shocking.
All around the posters. And that's shocking, yeah.
Yes. Now, Folajogun, comparatively speaking, one can say the issues surrounding people living with disabilities is getting more coverage, is more in the front burner of societal discourse than in times in the past. We seem to have moved the needle a bit. Would you say this is translated to an improvement in their lives in society?
See, the way it has translated, because yes, the awareness is there. People now know that they need to pay attention to that blind man on the street who wants to cross the road. You need to help. You need to ask if he needs a little help. Yes, it's a milestone. At some point, even in some countries, they now have some African countries now have disability rights acts. Take Nigeria, for example, they have the disability bill passed. But what's left to be seen is the implementation of these bills, is the implementation of these things we put in order to protect the rights of persons living with disabilities. Yes, we now know they have rights. Yes, we now know it's okay to be there for people with disabilities. Yes, we know it's okay to check on them. But right now, how about the banking halls that still do not have willable entrances? How about the churches that still have towers? Did Jesus not die for the disabled people too? You put your church in 3-story buildings. This environment is not accessible. Nothing is accessible. When it comes to the African context, a disabled person is just at a disadvantage. It doesn't matter what is being put in place for now. And for policies to be implemented in Africa, that's left to be seen, even to a large extent, when it doesn't concern persons who are without disabilities, not to mention persons with disabilities. The way the African continent is wired to just see this set of people, we the minority, as non-existent. But I will still go back to the point that we are all connected, and without one, the other cannot fly correctly.
I'm
So
happy
yeah.
you mentioned implementation of laws in your submission, and that brings me to this next question. We've seen several states pass laws to cater to the need of people living with disabilities. What impact have these various laws had on the inclusion of people living with disabilities in society, if any, or are they just laws?
They're just laws. Like that's it. They're just laws. We've passed it, bam. There's a bill, bam. That's it. That's where it ends for now. I'm yet to see. I'm a woman living with disability, and I'm yet to see one person that is being dragged to court because they are being mean to a person living with disability. I'm yet to see it. I'm yet to see all the compliance and everything. I'm yet to see all the companies employ 10% disabled persons all over Nigeria, not to mention Africa. I'm yet to see it. These are laws. I'm yet to see the governments themselves go all out and purchase vehicles that are disability compliant. I'm yet to see it.
Talking about
I'm yet to see it.
talking about a disability compliant and a person living with disability friendly environment like is obtained in Europe and other parts of the world, it would mean putting structures such as language interpreters, ramps, like you mentioned earlier, braille signage, lifts, digital accessibility tools, e-braille in place. How far away from doing these things is Nigeria?
Believe me, I wouldn't even know where to begin to answer that question because every day when you wake up as a person living with disability is a challenge in Nigeria. And we are way behind. Let's just put it at that. We're well behind. I'm yet to see structures that enable disabled. Okay, in my state, for instance, in Ondo State, okay, the government house now has an elevator for persons living with disabilities and other people, one floor elevators for that, and that's a right step in the right direction. I mean, in my state, they now employ SA for persons living with disabilities. Yes, that's okay. But there is a lot more to be done. Some of the banks are more compliant, but we're still very far away. Look at all the stairs everywhere. They see stairs as a form of aesthetic beautification thing. They apply it everywhere. And what about the person that cannot walk long distance, not to mention climbing those stairs? I went to OAU as an undergraduate, and my classroom was on the third floor. Somebody with mobility challenge, and at times you get to the third floor, they will tell you go to the odd. That's the third. That will be the next hall in another complex entirely. Then the other students will rush down there. Before I get to the lecture theater, for crying out loud, the lecture is almost halfway. I'm yet to see these structures.
Finally, Folajogun, I know your organization and other like-minded organizations have been having meetings with decision and stakeholders in this matter. How much pressure have you been putting, and do you think we might begin to see any sort of change, if not at the state level, at the federal level?
Yes, there are pressure groups who are coming to the awareness that persons living with disabilities cannot be left alone, especially in a country like Nigeria, where we are like 10%, that's 20 million of the over 201 million population the country currently has. So there are pressure groups, there are mounting pressure, they are making a difference from the federal level to the state level to the local government level. And hopefully we hope that these little drops of water will eventually amount to something globally and like centrally, that's what I mean. Because from the look of things, we have disabled persons in places of leadership, but I don't know if there's something that can be done to enforce these laws. I mean, we passed the bill, disability bill out in 2019. This is 2021. We're going into 22, and still Not a lot has been done. Not a lot has been done. So maybe we need more hands.
Okay.
Perhaps if more people are talking, if people like you keep inviting us to shows and everything, perhaps it will make the movement faster. But right now, we're still like way behind.
Thank you very much, Folajogun. I'd like to thank you for joining us on NC Continental Prime. We'll definitely keep the conversation around people living with disabilities on the front burner at our end here at New Central. Do have a wonderful evening.